Thank you guys so much for joining us for WriteHive 2022. And we are here today to talk working with a cover artist. I'm very happy to be joined by Dan Jolley, Stuart Jaffe, and Teralyn Mitchell. Teralyn, can you introduce yourself and just tell us what you are working on lately?
Yes, my name is Teralyn Mitchell, and I write contemporary romance, new adult, and adult. I also write under a pen name T.S. Mitchell, where I write YA fantasy. As of right now, I'm finishing up work on a duet, which is coming out this fall, and I have a cover reveal coming up in about a week, so I'm working on that as well.
Nice. Stuart, nice to see you, man.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stuart Jaffe. I'm best known for the Max Porter Paranormal Mysteries, but I write tons of series. And currently, I just finished writing the 12th book in my Nathan K fantasy thriller series, and I'll be doing another one of these soon, and plenty of stuff.
Thank you. And Dan, who obviously has a beautiful background there, man. Is that actually a commissioned piece there?
Yes, it is. I was quite sure that this was going to be the cover of my first ever fantasy novel, The Runemaster Homicide, which you can see right here. And boy, was that not the cover of my first ever fantasy novel, The Runemaster Homicide. We can get into the nuts and bolts of that later. I'm Dan Jolley. I've been writing a whole bunch of stuff in a whole bunch of different media for a whole bunch of years. Comic books and video games and kids books and licensed property, tie-in novels, original novels, and I'm currently working on the sequel to The Runemaster Homicide, and I just got hired to work on this thing that's kind of like a video game and kind of like a TV show, and that's all I can really say about it.
Yeah, story games. Absolutely.
Or they'll come and do bad things to me.
Well, this is not the talk about alternative avenues of employment for writers, but very interesting because there are so many ways that if you're writing and you're working on things, you can take it to different genres and different mediums. And so that's cool. That's very interesting for sure. I want to kind of start with the idea that we're either, talking about working with a cover artist, you're going the traditional path or you're going the self-published path. And so in a lot of ways, you give up control when you're going the traditional way. You also give up a bunch of the money to the publisher, but you don't have to do the legwork of getting everything done, like choosing your cover. Can I ask y'all, do you do traditional publishing, or is this a subject that's only going to really come up if you are self-published?
Like many of us, I'm a hybrid author. I've worked with a bunch of small presses and tangentially almost ended up working with Tor, but that project got nixed at the end. My experience has been that it depends on the publisher and what they know of your experience. So when I did my fantasy mystery, I did a fantasy mystery series with Falstaff Books. John Hartness, who is the publisher, I've known him for well over a decade. He knows that I know how to work with artists. So he basically picked the cover artist, and then he and I would communicate. Like he kind of was a go-between between me and the artist because he wanted to be in the loop. And there were limits to, how much money he's willing to spend and things like that.
Then, in a traditional way, like there are, avenues where working with a cover artist is important. So either way that you're going, you may have come across this. Teralyn, I see you nodding at that. Do you have anything to add on that?
So I am mostly self-published, but when I first started publishing, I was with a small indie press, and they basically asked me what did I want for my cover. I told them, knowing that they could go with that or maybe not go with it. They ended up going with what I wanted. They sent me the cover, asked me what I thought. I said, change the eye color, and that was it. So that cover was done. Being self-published means that all the decisions are on you. So I basically tell them what I want, approve it, and go through a bunch of drafts. And then once I'm satisfied, they send me the final copy, and then that's it.
And that's your only experience with it, or have you done self-publishing as well?
As I said, with self-publishing, you have all the control. You're paying all the money, so that means that you get all the control. You get to choose what you want. Best things to do is just research your genre, see what's trending, and then tell your cover designer what you want. And just don't be scared to tell them exactly what you're looking for, because basically they work for you, and they are willing to work and do anything that you want as within their skill set.
Oh, absolutely. Jan, sorry, I'm putting Dan and Jolley together. Dan, do you have anything self-published, or do you usually go the traditional route? And how does that vary as far as the cover?
So I've never self-published anything. I've been all traditionally published through. Most of my original stuff has been through small presses. Funny story, see if I can try to keep it brief. I had an idea for a fantasy detective novel series, which is what the Runemaster Homicide is. And I approached John Hartness, and I thought I had come up with something really original. Like I was like, fantasy detective, not like urban fantasy, like high fantasy, swords and magic and mystery, like detective stuff. I can't think of anybody doing anything like that. And I went to John Hartness and said, hey, what do you think about doing a book like this? And he goes, oh yeah, Stuart Jaffe has 3 of those coming out next year. Yours can come out after his. Yeah. But I've also done stuff with HarperCollins, some commissioned novels, because I kind of have 2 speeds. I'm like the R-rated, very violent, explicit, grown-up stuff, and also write for kids. And the kids stuff is usually the commission stuff for like HarperCollins. And this is one of the covers of a trilogy that
hold that a little bit closer to the camera. Let's see that cover.
That's the 3rd book in a trilogy. And I'm very happy with the cover, and it's a good thing because I had nothing to do with it. I mean, zero bagel to do with that cover. They sent me an email. The editor sent me an email one day and said, hey, Dan, here's the cover to your book.
Which is, as long as you're okay with giving up control, like you're going to take the other people as being experts, as knowing what they're talking about. That's great. If with a traditional publisher, that's the way that it goes.
Great if you get a good cover.
Yes.
If you get, yeah, and even really big, huge authors, like orders of magnitude bigger than I am, are very unhappy with the covers that they get sometimes.
But here's a side.
Let's go to a side point real quick. Is there any recourse for that? Can you do anything about it, or you're just staying? It's what it is.
If you're a big enough name, if Lee Child isn't happy with his cover, they'll fix it. But
nobody in the room.
So
right
here's
yes.
2 stories. I'll try and do these quickly. First, about that, there's a famous story about Stephen Donaldson when he was writing the Thomas Covenant series, and he was nobody. And I don't know, I've never read the series, but it's either the 1st or 2nd book has a picture of some guy coming out like fully clothed. There's a river behind him, and he's wet. And in the scene, he had just come out of the water, I guess, after a big fight or something. And he looked at the cover and he's like, he's supposed to have just come out of the water. He's not clothed. He should be dripping wet. And they're like, well, either change your story so that he's clothed or live with it. So they didn't, that was his choice. He could go back and write it in so it makes sense or not. That's up to him. So that there's that. But the other thing that's really important and that when you don't have that control, there's an author who I won't say his name, but going back almost 10 years ago, he'd gotten his debut with Tor. He'd written a kind of a science fiction mystery story. It was fantastic story, really great book. And they got him a top name cover artist, but he was a top name cover artist from like the 1950s and 60s. And he delivered a cover that would have been perfect in that era, right? I mean, it was like something like a Heinlein cover looked like, and with a guy in a spacesuit. And this was his debut, so his sales numbers were terrible. and he's had to rebuild a career with other publishers because Tor wasn't going to pay for him again, and it wasn't his fault at all. So
don't judge a book by its cover, but we all kind of judge a book by its cover, just a little bit.
That's the point. That's the point of the cover.
So, Teralyn, do you have a vision before approaching an artist?
Sometimes I do, but a lot of the times I don't. I just, like I said, I do market research, and see what's trending. Since I write romance, which is contemporary or new adult, it's usually like a man chest or a couple that's on a cover. And for me, I don't want it to be too sexual, sorry. But because if it is, then I might have trouble doing ads or putting it on Amazon. So that is something that I have to look into and think about when I choose a cover. And also, most of the times I don't have a vision. I just think, oh, this looks good, and make something for me, because I just feel like they are the cover designer. They know what they're doing. If I give them a little bit of information, then they can just take that and make something. Then I can say yes or no.
That might be better. Just worrying about the aesthetics, just worrying about who is going to appeal to, than being, having a fidelity to the story. Because the idea of, as Stuart said, like this guy's walking out of a river and he's fully clothed and he's totally wet. If you put that guy in a loincloth, it's a different kind of book. But Dan, in talking about, you've even shown two different covers of books. One that the one behind you didn't end up as the cover. Right. Was this commission, kind of thing based on a vision that you had about the book, or do you let them explore based on the book, give people cliff notes or anything?
Well, okay. So this was like a year before the book was going to come out, the Runemaster Homicide. And this is the main character from the book. This is Niska Stonegate. She is the detective in question. And I wanted some promotional art. I wanted to be able to go to conventions and, instead of just telling people what the book was going to be about, I wanted to be able to show them. And I cast about online and found this artist, a young woman in Serbia named Milica Celikovitz. She is incredibly talented. She did exactly this kind of art. And so I was like, can I commission a piece of art? And she worked with me very, very closely.
And you did this separately, like you did this, you paid for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is fine, just clarifying.
Yeah, I totally paid for it. And that's why it's now on bookmarks and all over my website. And there's a very close to life-size banner that I put behind my table at shows with Niska there.
Image. Yes,
because I do own the image. And let's see if I can get out of the way here. This is exactly what Niska looks like. I mean, in the book, this is down to the molecule exactly what Niska looks like. So, that time I was very, very, very pleased with the result of the collaboration with the artist. And the only reason why it didn't get used for the cover is that the publisher didn't want, I'm contracted for at least 3 books, and the publisher didn't want to pay what I paid 2 more times. His in-house cover artist, and the cover that they did is awesome. It's a great cover. It's representative of another part of the story. I love it. And I had some input on that. But like there are other instances. I did a book called The Storm, which came out from Seventh Star Press, and I brought my own cover artist for that. They paid him, but they agreed with my choice, and so John Nadeau did the cover there. And I subsequently moved from Seventh Star to Falstaff for all of my original books. And so Falstaff was like, well, we want to do new covers because, it's a new publisher. Let's do some new covers. And I said, well, I mean, what do you think about doing something similar to the one that was there, and they basically said, yeah, we're not going to do that.
Okay.
And so this is the new cover of The Storm. Like, I worked in comic books for years and years. John Nadeau, the original artist, is a comic book artist that I had worked with.
Yeah, you can see it. Absolutely.
I knew him. I knew what he was capable of, which was awesome talent and delivering on deadlines. And so, that's why I went with him. But every time anybody sees the new one in comparison with the old one, they're like, oh, that looks more like a bestseller. That's got the vibe of like a mass market kind of book.
Yeah. No.
No slight to John whatsoever, but he was going off my input. I told him what elements I wanted to see, and the experienced novel cover artists were like, let's do something more like this. And exactly what Teralyn was saying, I'm not a cover artist, and so I think I might have learned a little bit of a lesson there. Let the artists art.
In my previous life, I directed theater, and so that's where I kind of learned how to talk to artists, because I was talking with scenic designers and costume designers and all that. And I learned right from the beginning that if I'm doing my job right, I will convey to them, everything I convey to them should just be the baseline where they're starting, and what they deliver to me should be nothing like I envisioned, and yet I should look at it and go, that is exactly what I wanted.
Couldn't be any other way.
That is, that's it. That's perfect. And it'll be so much better than anything I would have come up with. And you achieve that by giving them the room to explore. So if you sit there, and I'll pick on Dan because I know Dan, but if you sit there and you say to a cover artist, I want her to look, and you describe the woman, the blue woman behind you to a T, they can deliver that. But that may not be the best thing for a cover or for whatever the project is. And if instead you communicate the basic needs of a cover, and then just the emotions and just the feeling that you're trying to convey, and obviously the genre you're trying to convey, and let them have at it, you'll be so much happier with your results than if you try to micromanage them. And they'll be a lot happier to work with you more than once.
The trust, I was trying to talk about it as traditional versus self or hybrid in the middle. Really, there's a lot of trust to step away and let the other cover artists do their thing in all situations. Mm-hmm. Danny alluded to it for a moment, but I think that we are going to be having a lot of audience members who are thinking about working with a cover artist. So to get to a little bit of brass tacks, and feel free to estimate, whatever, can I ask each of y'all what a cover artist, would cost?
I'll jump in. I don't mind.
Please.
For a self-published novel, I will not pay I won't pay more than like $400, and that's really top end stuff. The prices have just come down so much because there's so many artists out there working and doing great work. One of the ways you can get the price down is usually when I find an artist I like, I contract with them for multiple books. I'm usually doing a series. So I'll say, and so I'll give you 3 books. They now know they're getting 3 books worth of work over the next year or two, and I'll get a discount for that. And that gets the price down.
It's a single image, you're working on a cover, and it depends on how much detail or how much is going into it, as well as the style and everything. Teralyn, do you have any hard numbers that you can help aspiring authors with?
Okay, so for me, where I'm at in my career right now, which is not aspiring, or it's kind of like newbie, but I've actually been publishing since 2017. I do not pay more than $200 for a cover, especially in the romance genre, because I know that while you can get a really good cover for more, you can still get something that will work for you for $200 or less. For me, usually I don't pay more than $170 for a cover, because a lot of the times I do look for sales that cover designers might have, and that's just how I do it. So my hard limit is $200 for like aspiring or newbie authors, because you don't want to spend all your money on a cover when you do need to be putting your money elsewhere as well.
these are, for our audience, these are just estimates. This is just an eyeball, and it's different perspectives. People in different places in their career, people in different places in the world will have completely different prices for them. You might find it.
It also depends on genre.
Yes.
Yes, so like with romance genre, it is going to be less that you pay for a cover because it's not as much manipulation or photo manipulation. So you're basically usually finding a stock picture that you found on Deposit Photos or one of those places and send it to the cover designer, or they find it and they make you a cover. So for fantasy, I still probably wouldn't pay more than 200, 250 because it just depends on what you want. If you don't a lot of manipulations to the cover, like artwork or any of that, that is going to be a little bit more. So genre does play a big role in how much you may pay, but still have a limit that you're not willing to go above, because remember, there are other expenses when you're self-publishing that is just not the cover. So yeah.
Good point. I did not mention when I introduced myself, I have over like around 50 books. So $400 is no longer a big deal. But yeah, when I was first starting out, it's still where when I budget, it's one of the places I'll budget the most for a book, because it is the thing that's going to sell the book. But if your budget is significantly less, then yeah, don't go. I mean, don't go where you can't afford. That's not a good idea.
No, absolutely. As we had, mentioned, it was a traditional publishing. They're taking on the risk, but they're also taking most of the profit. The reverse, of doing it as a self-published, you're taking on the risk, you're taking on the profit, but you're also potentially taking on the loss.
Right.
Dan, do you have anything to throw out to aspiring authors on prices?
Well, okay, so this piece is the only one that I've commissioned myself, and I knew that I wanted it to do like a lot of work for me. I figured it would be the cover of the first book, but I knew that I wanted it to be banners and bookmarks and buttons and posters and all this kind of good stuff. She may show up on a t-shirt. I don't know. But that image cost me $700.
Mm-hmm.
You put it to work, man. Like, that's the thing, is if we're talking about this and we're talking about prices and how much and what you're doing with a cover, what you're doing with a cover image, two things I'm going to say, because that image right back there, I don't see any text on it and stuff like that. Make sure to get from an artist the image without text on it, as well as the image with text on it, as well as an agreement that you may change it into other things and stuff like that as you go on down the line, because that's really where you can stretch out and use images, repeatedly in many different varieties. Absolutely. What do you guys have to say when you're looking at samples or looking at an artist's portfolio? What are things that stick out to you?
I was looking for consistency. Like I didn't want to find somebody who had like one image in 100 that I thought would be the right style. I really wanted something like an artist that consistently did work in the style that I was looking for, which Melitza did. She also likes to draw lots of pictures of cute cartoony dragons, but most of the ones that she did of humanoid type figures were of women that embodied the kind of strength that I was looking for. The combination, like I told her that I thought Niska was just, she needed to be 35% gorgeous and 65% kick-ass. I think my math is right there.
Yeah, you're okay. Yeah.
And not a mathematician. That's why I write. And she came through, and I didn't want to like take a gamble that somebody could reproduce something that I had only seen them do once before.
Yeah. Stuart, anything to say about looking at
first, I will underscore Dan's comment, because I find a lot of my artists, I find them online sometimes, but I do a lot of science fiction fantasy conventions, and there are always artists there, and I have a huge stack of their cards. So when I'm looking for somebody new, I can go through the ones that I like. And
that's a great resource. Yeah.
But I've learned, I've done enough books that I've made all the mistakes you can make. And one of them is exactly what Dan said, where I met an artist and, he had this incredible piece of artwork, and that was the perfect style. I'm like, that's what I want. So we kind of on a handshake got things rolling and signed out a contract. I had him for 3 books. And then the first book came time and we worked on it, and it was not that, because that was his best thing he'd ever done, and that's why it was center, on his thing. And I didn't think to look through and see, oh, that's a one-off, And this is a long time ago, and so I made that mistake. And I think, and which is the other thing is that, as we were talking about budgeting, and this ties in, is when you're doing your first book, budget accordingly, expecting that you will, especially if your book is successful, you will probably end up redoing that cover, either because you'll have more money and you're just going to learn more about what the cover should be. And I've had to do it a couple times where I've had a cover where the cover was fine, but then as the series progressed and showed it had legs, I realized what it needed to be, and I went a different direction, that kind of thing.
That is a great point for sure, that if you're starting on this journey, don't feel married to it. This is not always going to be it. If you are a painter, that little sunflower that you drew when you were in 4th grade, you don't hang that up first thing at your art show. No, you can go back and, put your new stuff out there. Teralyn, working with artist portfolios, any pointers you have?
So just look at their portfolios. A lot of times I'm in a lot of Facebook groups with the cover artists. So I just go through and look at what they've made for their pre-mades or their customs and see what they've done. You just want to make sure that that cover that you love, that you want them to kind of replicate, that's something they do over and over. Because if not, then they're probably not going to give you what you want. So I just say ask for their portfolio if they don't have one. Go to their websites, go to Facebook, and just see what they've done in the past.
Now let's say this. So you're referring to the genres and how there are different cover artists for them. Are there any, let's say, repositories or places on the internet to find, cover artists that would be specific to genre, or is everybody just out there Googling, and take your shots?
For me, I've found that it's really hard to Google because I don't know what I'm looking for. I'll type in romance cover designer and something may come up. For me, it's really Facebook. Go into author Facebook groups. Basically, there are 4 authors, and a lot of people ask questions and say, who knows a good fantasy cover designer, or who knows a good romance cover designer? So that's where I find a lot of the cover designers. And also you can just go on Amazon or one of the retailers, look in the sneak peek and see who they used as their cover designer and try to find them that way. And then I just save them for later. And hopefully if I need someone new, I'll just go to that folder on my internet browser and choose from there.
I scour real people at conventions.
Yes,
my genre. Not all genres have a prolific convention circuit like science fiction and fantasy do. Obviously, Googling is something you can do. This can work, but I'll just throw it out there is looking at the covers, that you look at things you're reading that you like. And if you like the cover art, see who it's being done by, particularly if you're looking at indie published stuff. The market for illustrators and artists for the major publishers is not what it used to be, but it's still really high. So back in the day before self-publishing, I have some friends who are artists in that world, and to do a cover, they would get paid easily $10,000 or more, $30,000. It's a piece of artwork. Yeah. It'd be a huge piece of oil painted artwork, and then it eventually got digitized and all that. But the indie thing has just, brought the prices down. The in thing for the last 5 years or so has been much more going towards graphic artists than illustrators. So that's brought the prices down, but they're still commanding, maybe not 30,000, but they're still getting the average, 5,000-8,000. And even if I know some of these guys, and I'm like, for my first covers, I was like, well, I know they have what they call friend rates, but even those, still you're talking $2,000 for a cover. I'm like, I can't pay that. No.
But that's out there,
So it isn't. Yeah, I mean, if money's not an
pay.
option for you, it's there, and you will get an incredible cover. But I say all that mainly to just give people a realistic idea, so that if they pull up that book that's from Harlequin or from Tor or from whoever, and they're like, "Ooh, I want that," you ain't gonna probably want to pay for that, even at the best rate you can get.
Absolutely. Oh my, Dan, anything to say about looking at artist portfolios?
The sort of go-to answer for looking online is DeviantArt, but I have not had much luck with DeviantArt. What I have had more luck with is ArtStation, artstation.com, I think it is. That's where I found Milica. And there are quite a few like seriously talented cover art, the people who look like they belong providing art for covers of novels on ArtStation. But yeah, it really is sometimes a question of somebody who's like established and is able to charge the higher rates. Because I thought $700 was a little bit steep to pay for this piece, but I'm glad I did it. Then I was looking on ArtStation for somebody else to do like a follow-up piece. Found an artist, really liked her style. She was a little bit more horror tinged, and approached her, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I could totally do that. Yeah, it'll be $2,000." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Let me get back to you."
It is supply and demand. So in the case of an artist, if you find them when they're earlier in their career, they're trying to build a portfolio. They just stack all these suckers up. And as they get more and more on there and they look better because they've had more practice, they up their prices, because otherwise they would have so much work that you couldn't even do it in a day. So I
was just going to say that, because I've had this happen to me about 3 times now, where I find an artist and we start working, and basically the big one I had was a guy named Jeff DeCall who did he does comic book art, you covers for issues, just cover art, and he did 9 novels for me. And right around the time the last one was coming up, this is going back a bunch of years, but he did for Marvel, he did a kind of Iron Man, but it was a black woman with a big afro and kind of an angle.
Riri Williams.
And and everybody knows, and that image actually, this is back when Entertainment Weekly was a magazine, and I used to get it, and I'm looking through the magazine, I'm like, I know Jeff DeCall, that's his artwork. And the second I saw that, I was like, oh no, there goes my artist. And sure enough, the minute our contract was done, I went from, I think I was paying him $200 or $300 a cover. He's like, minimum was $1,000. And and I couldn't blame him, but I've never been able to work with him since. And I've had that happen a couple times where I've had artists who that's why I get them at least for 3 books for a contract, because then they're stuck.
But that's definitely part of the whole thing. And Dan talking about different ways of being a writer, in the beginning, and working on projects either on commission or in conjunction with other people or established IP. If you're in demand, you're in demand. You're going to raise those rates, absolutely. So the same thing would happen with a writer. You just happen to be talking about cover artists at this time. Has anyone commissioned anything and then had revisions? Let me ask that. How that goes, is it several times? Is it one time? And, what's the artist's versus the author's priority, in that case?
Right. So my experience has been usually, first of all, a lot of that is laid out in the contract, how many times you can actually send something back before they start charging you on an hourly basis. And that's basically to stop you from micromanaging and being a jerk. I have found, as long as you're a nice person, even if it goes beyond that, there's usually some kind of miscommunication going, and they understand, and it all works out fine. If you're being a jerk, then they'll start charging.
I went back and forth with Milica several times on the Niska piece here. None of the revisions were major. Probably the thing that we went back and forth with the most was the way her horns look, because I wanted the horns to be very specific, and she asked me to come up with find some images of horns in nature, and I couldn't find any that looked exactly the way I wanted them to look. So I had to fall back on my horrible artistic skills myself, and draw like a set of horns that looked the way I wanted them to. And I scanned those and sent them over, and she was like, "Oh yeah, okay," and immediately did what I wanted. But once the process was all over, she was like, "You're one of the best clients I've had. This is easy. Come back when you have more."
Good. No, absolutely. Heck yeah. Teralyn?
So basically, being self-published means I commission all my covers. I usually go through a bunch of revisions. Like, I think back in October, I had some covers made, and we had about 9 emails back and forth. So she sent me like 3 or 4 drafts, and I was like, I don't like this, this is good, we're going in the right direction. And so the revision process is just give and take. So just say, I like this or I don't. The cover designer tries to work with you and tries to do what you want. Just don't be a jerk about it. Know that they're doing their best they can, and they're willing to work with you, and they're willing to do whatever you want, basically, because you are paying them. So just don't be scared to tell them, this isn't working for me, or this is okay, maybe we should go like keep this, but maybe do a different cover model. So that's basically how I work with them with doing commission pieces.
I think Teralyn hit on a couple of things. One, when it's your first time working with an artist, they expect it to a little bit more go back and forth because you're learning how to communicate to each other. Yes. And the second thing is most artists, actually all artists I've ever worked with, usually, like Teralyn was saying, like usually they'll send me a pencil sketch that just is like, it looks like a scribbly line thing, but like, okay, there's a figure here. Is this what you're talking about? Yeah. So you're kind of approving step by step way before you get to the end product. When I say don't be a jerk, it's not just being mean. It's like, you don't want, what drives them crazy is we go through this step by step, and at the end you're like, how come there's no amulet? And you're like, and they're like, you never said you wanted an amulet. We've been talking for a month or a week or whatever, however long the process has been. And then you want an amulet. Well, they're like, well, then I'm gonna have to charge you because I need to go on my next project, and I got to do this at night now or something. That's the kind of thing. If you're just working with them and being as clear as you can be, it should be fine, because they want to do a good job for you. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah, the thumbnail sketches are incredibly important in the process, and like I mentioned, I read a lot of comic books, and getting thumbnail sketches from the artist for the interior art is incredibly important there as well, because you don't want to ask an artist to change finished art. I told Milica that I wanted Niska here walking toward the camera in a very tall, regal, commanding kind of pose. And she said, okay, I can totally do that. I also like to draw like action poses. Can I send you a sketch of her in an action pose as well? And I was like, sure. So she sent a sketch of the tall regal, and also of one of Niska like jumping off a boulder like in mid-flight with an axe up in the air, and it looked amazing. It wasn't what I wanted for this piece, but it still looked amazing. And I regretfully, I had to say, let's stick with the first idea. But then she was like, first idea it is, coming right up.
And then if you go by that, if you go with the sketch and each step, then if you get to the end, you're not adding stuff, but you're just shifting, little details. As long as there's nothing crazy. I have one of the Max Porter books has all the covers have this ghost detective guy on them, and it just has him like he's being dragged down, and there's all these arms, these claws dragging him down, and it looked great. But there was this one claw that was like kind of like grabbing him a little lower on his shirt, but there were, like, you can see there's like pulling on my shirt, but there was nothing. It was flat, and it looked really weird. So I pointed it out to her, and she was like, I totally agree. And in a second, in the next day, in that little detail and that kind of thing, they're not, if you're improving on what they're doing and that kind of thing is fine. But if you're micromanaging, like I said, and adding stuff in that wasn't agreed on, that's a whole different thing.
And one huge advantage of of digital art too, like when I was going back and forth with Melitza about the horns, I said, I'm sorry to have to keep like harping on this. And she said, I put the horns on a separate layer.
Yeah.
You just click, they're gone. It's fine.
Also, since we're talking about communicating with artists, learn what what the size is going to look like on Amazon, right? It's going to be a small little thing, because and this I learned actually again from some of the professional artists I know from back in the early days. They used to do, a lot of them used to also do card art for Magic the Gathering and that kind of thing, and they would get so frustrated because the art director would be like, okay, for this card we want a horde of orcs coming down this mountain, and there's the one on the back who's the top of the mountain, and they're like, that's fine, okay, I can do a whole horde coming down, and the leader on the back is like, yes, but his sword has to have a jewel right here, and they're like he's gonna be just a stick figure back there, you're not gonna see any of it, but they want it for the actual, so they get what they want. But that kind of thing, if you're wasting somebody's time because nobody's gonna see it, you're not only wasting their time, you're wasting your own time and money because nobody's going to see it.
And let me say this as well, it's commiserate to a degree with how much you're paying. If you are looking for an early artist in their career, you might have some more of those miscommunications. They're not going to be as professional about it, but you're dealing with them as well as they're dealing with you. It's all, a roll through that. Let's say this. So we're getting towards the end. Let me ask you guys, if you don't mind rattling off, what are some key points that make a cover great? I'm just leaving that out there. Dan, you're volunteering.
I was trying to let the others go first.
I know. It's all good.
I'll jump in if no one else wants.
It's kind of indefinable, or at least it would be indefinable for me as not an artist. Something that makes a cover jump off the page, jump off the rack, jump off the shelf in the bookstore. Something that from across the room you see it, and you might not know what it is, but it stands out from the other covers around it, and it makes you want to walk across the room and look at it. Or if you're scrolling through on Goodreads or whatever, bland cover, boom. There's something there.
Except Dan just also hit on the cover conundrum, because he said you want it to stand out, but it also has to look exactly like all the others.
It has to fit the genre. Yes.
Because that's the thing. While yes, you want your cover to stand out. You want somebody to stop scrolling and pick your book. But the first thing your cover has to do is, in that second, communicate the genre or communicate what they're getting. It does. That's why your cover character, my advice is always to people, don't get hung up if the character doesn't look exactly like the real character in the book, especially in the world of ebooks, because that cover, they're not going to be looking at it all the time. They look at it when they buy it and they never see it again, unless they really want to go. And then they're usually looking at the black and white version of it, unless it's on an iPad or something. So, it's real quick story is this cover. This is the art for my Max Porter, but this is also the cover of the first book. Okay, and I don't know if you can quite see. It's basically just
It's got some glare on the top, but you can see his face. Yeah.
Let me push this back a little bit. You can see. There you go. So, and basically, I told the artist he had that side of the book. The other side is where my name and the book name goes. It has to convey mystery and paranormal. And the one character is this Sam Spade kind of detective. And so he sent me sketches. We went through, here's why I learned not to micromanage. I said, and I absolutely don't want glowing eyes, because everything, that's the way we always say, it's stupid. And he agrees, like, I don't want glowing eyes either. does all these sketches, comes up with this great artist, does great work. And he's trying mystical symbols and all these things, and they're work, but they're like just not working. And one day he's like, all right, he sends me an email with this image, and he's like, I know we said we wouldn't do this, but I just did it because I was tired and I was curious, and it kind of works. And I looked at it, I'm like, crap, it does work. And but it does in an instant, you know, and nobody's eyes glow in the book at all. But that's not important. What's important is you look at it and you get mystery and you get paranormal, and that's all, you know, that's what I needed it to do first.
Yes, and in a short amount of, you know, visual time, let's say.
Yeah.
Teralyn, do you have any points about what makes a cover great?
Basically, if it fits the genre, because if it's out of date, it's just not gonna be great, and you're not gonna sell books. So for me, it's basically like the color, like the cover, like the artist, the stock images, making sure they're not in weird poses. Font makes a really great cover. You have to have the right font based on your genre, because I know that seems weird, but it really does matter. If you're writing romance, there's different fonts you're going to use versus science fiction. So you just make sure that it looks good in that way. For me, that's what makes a good cover. Font, colors, and the image that's on the cover.
Thank you, guys. Absolutely. So I think we've covered the entire process from finding your artist to, you know, dealing with him and sending emails back and forth and not being a jerk along the way, and how much you might be expected to pay, as well as getting to the end, scrapping it a few years later when you have to redo it and make a new cover, but still you're at the end product, or scrapping it entirely and making it into a giant ass awesome poster. So it happens. There's so many different uses as you go along through this, that if you commission a cover work, it doesn't have to be the be all end all. And I love that you guys have given a couple of great examples of different things you can do with it along the way. Perfectly fine. Thank you guys for joining us for WriteHive for this talk about working with a cover artist. I'm going to ask everybody here. Let's start at the bottom on my screen. Let us know your social media, where we can find you guys online, and what's your latest book, Teralyn?
You can find me online at Teralyn Mitchell author on everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all those places. On TikTok, I am Teralyn N. Mitchell author, as well as you can find me on my website, which is teralynmitchell.com. I am currently working on the duet, as I said, that's coming out this fall. I'm just working on getting it finished, as well as doing a cover reveal. And I'm also working on a series that I hope to start publishing next year.
Stuart, what you working on?
What am I working on right now? I'm actually working on a proposal for fall staff books to do. So once that's done, then I'll be writing the last book in my Parallel Society series, which is another urban fantasy series I write. So I got that all going. You can find, best place online is Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Stuart Jaffe's Madhouse, so you can click on that and join, and you'll see plenty more of this kind of stuff.
Nice, thank you. And Dan?
Well, not that you've heard me mention this book or in the last hour, but this is my latest book, the fantasy detective novel, The Runemaster Homicide. I'm most of the way done with the sequel, which is coming out in the fall of this year. If you go to danjolley.com, and that's Jolley with an E before the Y, everything I've ever done is there. I have a tutorial on how to write comic book scripts. You can sign up for my newsletter, which is a sort of photographic comic strip kind of thing with like word balloons. And Stuart was a guest, in fact, on it. You see me interview guest authors and argue with my cats. And if you sign up for that, then you get a free novella called The Last of the Electric Knights, which is about a silver alloy robot built by Nikola Tesla to fight werewolves.
Oh, man. I love the idea of Tesla being a character, because he was a character in real life. You make it fictional, he's a nutter. Absolutely. I'll thank you guys so much, and I hope that y'all are enjoying the WriteHive conference. Thank you.